The bread of bone. The aroma of freshly baked bread used to be my muse. It wafted through the air like a warm hug, promising comfort and indulgence. But now, the scent of the St. Pierre bakery was a cloying shroud, a sickly sweet mask draped over a festering secret. It all started innocently enough. After years spent working for faceless corporations, I craved a return to simpler things. So, I bought the struggling St. Pierre bakery, a charming brick building nestled in a quiet corner of New Orleans. The peeling paint and faded awning held a certain allure, whispering tales of forgotten recipes and artisanal delights. The first few days were a whirlwind. Crusty baguettes emerged from the cavernous oven, their golden brown surface a testament to my newfound passion. Customers, drawn by the intoxicating aroma, filled the shop with chatter and delight. But then, things began to change. It started subtly, a stray feather on the floor, a faint scratching sound from the back room at night. I brushed them off as remnants of neglect, the ghosts of bygone flour sacks and clattering pans. Then came the first odd order. It was scrawled on a crumpled piece of paper, left on the doorstep one chilly morning. It wasn't for a croissant or a baguette, but for something called pain d'os, bread of bone. The name sent shivers down my spine. Bone in bread? It was absurd. Yet, a morbid curiosity gnawed at me. I spent hours scouring dusty cookbooks and forgotten online archives, but found no mention of such a recipe. Ignoring the unease, I tossed the note aside. But the odd orders kept coming, each one more unsettling than the last. Brioche de sang, blood brioche, éclair de cendre, ash éclair. I refused to fill them, convinced it was a prank by some local teenagers. But the customers requesting these bizarre pastries were different. They were cloaked figures who materialized from the swirling mist that often clung to the cobblestone streets at dawn. Their eyes held an unnatural gleam, and their voices were raspy whispers that sent chills down my spine. One particularly foggy morning, a woman with skin the color of aged parchment shuffled in. Her sunken eyes held me captive. "Do you not have what I seek, baker?" she rasped, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "The pain d'os?" Terror choked my voice. I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered, forcing a smile. She leaned closer, the smell of damp earth and decay washing over me. "You will learn," she hissed, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "For the hunger grows." Then, just as abruptly as she appeared, she vanished into the swirling fog, leaving me trembling behind the counter. Sleep became a distant memory, replaced by a gnawing fear that clawed at my sanity. I barricaded the bakery door at night, the rhythmic scratching noises from the back room a constant torment. Desperate for answers, I confided in Ms. Rousseau, the elderly woman who ran the antique shop next door. Her weathered face creased with concern as I recounted the strange orders and the unsettling customers. "There are whispers," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "of a dark magic practiced by a coven long ago. They used bread, not to nourish, but to appease a hunger that lurks in the shadows." My blood ran cold. "What kind of hunger?" Ms. Rousseau shook her head, a tremor running through her frail body. "It feeds on life force. They say the coven was banished, but perhaps their rituals linger within these very walls." Her words sparked a horrifying realization. The scratching noises, the strange orders. It all made a sick kind of sense. The bakery wasn't baking bread. It was being used as a conduit, a vessel to feed some unspeakable entity. Fueled by a desperate need to stop it, I delved deeper into the bakery's history. In the dusty basement, beneath a layer of cobwebs and forgotten baking tools, I found a hidden chamber. Here, amongst dusty scrolls and tarnished cauldrons, lay a thick, leather-bound book. Its pages were brittle and yellowed with age, filled with indecipherable symbols and cryptic incantations. Days bled into nights as I deciphered the book, its secrets slowly revealing themselves. It was a grimoire, a manual for the dark magic Ms. Rousseau had spoken of. And at its heart was the recipe for pain d'os, a grotesque concoction that used human bone meal as a key ingredient. The revelation sent a wave of nausea crashing over me. The bakery wasn't just haunted. It was a sacrificial altar. A cold dread settled into my bones. Now, I wasn't just fighting for my sanity, but for my life. The next odd order arrived with a bone-chilling difference. A single human finger, wrapped in a blood-stained cloth. The realization was chilling. They weren't just requesting the bread of bone. They were daring me to bake it. Panic clawed at me, but a flicker of defiance ignited within. I wouldn't be their pawn. Desperate for help, I revisited Ms. Rousseau. She listened intently, her frail body trembling. "There might be a way," she rasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "An ancient ritual, a counterspell of sorts. But it requires..." She hesitated, her gaze flickering to a small, silver amulet she wore around her neck. "What?" I pressed, urgency filling my voice. "Sacrifice?" she whispered, her voice filled with resignation. "To sever the connection, you must offer something of equal value. The sacrifice. It was a chilling concept, but the alternative? I couldn't let the bakery continue feeding this monstrous entity. Not if it meant condemning innocent souls. Ms. Rousseau explained the ritual in detail, her voice laced with trepidation. It required an offering of pure, unadulterated life force, the spark before it ignites into consciousness. In the grimoire's twisted logic, this meant an egg. But not just any egg. It had to be a perfect, unblemished specimen, untouched by the world. With a heavy heart, I raided my dwindling supplies, locating a single, pristine egg nestled at the back of the fridge. The ritual was a chilling affair. Following Ms. Rousseau's instructions, I performed a series of arcane gestures, chanting archaic words that sent shivers down my spine. The bakery, usually filled with the warmth of the ovens, grew cold, an oppressive silence blanketing the air. As I reached the climax of the ritual, a guttural growl echoed from the back room. The air crackled with a malevolent energy, and shadows writhed in the corners. The doorknob rattled violently, a sense of immense pressure pushing against the barrier. But I held firm, clutching the egg, channeling every ounce of defiance into my voice. Finally, with a blinding flash of white light that momentarily rendered me blind, the chanting stopped. A heavy silence descended, thicker than ever before. Tentatively, I opened my eyes. The air felt lighter, cleaner. The scratching noises from the back room had stopped. But had it worked? I approached the back room cautiously, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was shrouded in an unnatural darkness, deeper than the night itself. With a deep breath, I fumbled for the light switch. The room was empty. No flour sacks, no forgotten tools, just bare concrete walls and cracked flooring. Relief washed over me, so intense it almost knocked me off my feet. But then I noticed it. In the center of the room, nestled amongst the dust bunnies, lay a single cracked bone. It was human, that much was clear. But unlike the finger from the order, it was aged, weathered by time. A chilling realization dawned on me. The ritual hadn't stopped the coven's magic. It had severed the connection to the present. The bakery had been a conduit for a much older evil, and the bone was a grim reminder of its past deeds. I gingerly picked up the bone, a morbid sense of responsibility washing over me. This wasn't over. The darkness was gone, but not defeated. Now, I had a new purpose: to find the source of the evil, to ensure it never returned. News of the bakery's sudden closure spread quickly through the New Orleans grapevine. Ms. Rousseau, a staunch believer in discretion, helped fabricate a plausible story. But I knew the truth. The shop remained shuttered, a silent sentinel against the shadows. I became a ghost, roaming the back alleys and forgotten corners of the city, searching for remnants of the coven, for any clue that might lead me to the source of the darkness. Years passed, filled with dead ends and frustration. The bakery slowly became my haven, a place of both horrifying memories and unwavering resolve. One rainy afternoon, a familiar figure shuffled into Ms. Rousseau's antique shop. It was the woman from years ago, her skin even more leathery, her eyes burning with a feverish hunger. "You haven't forgotten," she rasped, her voice filled with a desperate urgency. The hunger, it grows stronger. He needs the bread of bone. He, not it. A single, chilling name tumbled from her lips. Baptiste. The name sent a jolt through me. Baptiste Lacroix, a figure shrouded in whispers and legends. A sorcerer said to have practiced dark magic in the swamps outside New Orleans centuries ago. The coven, it seemed, was working for him, feeding him life force through the bread of bone. A flicker of hope ignited within me. If I could find Baptiste's lair and disrupt the source, I could break the coven's hold for good. I desperately needed Ms. Rousseau's help, but the look in her eyes told a different story. "I can't," she croaked, her voice weak. "I helped you before, but this is beyond me." Panic surged through me. She was the only one who truly understood the danger, the only one who could offer guidance. But she was frail, near the end of her life. Suddenly, a wheezing cough racked her body. She clutched her chest, her face contorting in pain. With a final gasp, she crumpled to the floor, her silver amulet clattering to the ground beside her. Despair threatened to consume me. Ms. Rousseau was gone, and I was alone with the weight of this monstrous secret. But grief had to wait. Time was of the essence. Armed with her cryptic warnings and the knowledge gleaned from the grimoire, I ventured deep into the Louisiana swamplands. The air hung heavy with the smell of decay, and the trees formed a gnarled, skeletal canopy overhead. Following faint whispers from forgotten lore, I navigated the treacherous terrain, each step a gamble against unseen dangers. Days bled into nights, and the oppressive atmosphere slowly chipped away at my sanity. I saw things that defied explanation, wispy figures flitting through the trees, disembodied voices whispering secrets in the humid air. Then, just as doubt began to gnaw at my resolve, I stumbled upon it. A crumbling stone building, overgrown with vines and shrouded in an unnatural mist. It reeked of death and decay, a tangible manifestation of the evil that festered within. This was Baptiste's lair. Terror warred with a desperate sense of purpose within me. I crept closer, the grimoire clutched tightly in my hand. Inside, a grotesque scene unfolded. The air hung heavy with the stench of blood and decay. Cackling figures, the coven members, surrounded a massive stone altar, chanting in a guttural tongue. And on the altar, strapped to the cold stone, lay a young girl. Her eyes were wide with terror, her face pale and drawn. They were preparing her as the next sacrifice, the life force needed to appease Baptiste. Primal scream ripped from my throat. Ignoring the danger, I burst into the room, brandishing the grimoire like a shield. The coven members turned, their faces contorted in a mixture of surprise and rage. I launched into a desperate chant, channeling every ounce of my remaining willpower into disrupting the ritual. The air crackled with a malevolent energy as the two forces collided. But I was outmatched. The coven members, fueled by years of dark magic, overpowered me. They tore the grimoire from my grasp, its pages fluttering to the ground. Then, with a sickening twist, they shoved me aside, their chanting renewed with a renewed fervor. As the ritual reached its climax, a dark figure materialized from the shadows. Tall and gaunt, with eyes that burned with an infernal glow, he was everything the legends described Baptiste, the sorcerer fueled by centuries of stolen life force. He reached out a skeletal hand and placed it upon the girl's head. A wave of dark energy surged through her, draining the life from her eyes. A sickening scream escaped her lips, then silence. Baptiste roared in triumph, his skeletal body momentarily illuminated by a macabre green light. The coven members bowed before him, their faces twisted in a grotesque mockery of worship. But the victory was short-lived. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, the very fabric of reality seeming to strain. Baptiste's eyes widened in horror. He had overreached, consumed too much life force at once. The chamber began to tremble, the walls buckling inwards. With a deafening crash, the entire structure imploded, burying Baptiste, the coven members, and myself under a mountain of rubble. I lay there, trapped, my vision blurring. The weight of the stones pressed down on me, my lungs struggling for air. A single tear rolled down my cheek, a silent cry of despair. I had failed. I didn't save the girl, and in the end, my sacrifice wouldn't even destroy